Hi, everybody. Mitch Chanbam here. Thanks for joining me today for the Security News Update. So let's see what we got cooking here. Under security and privacy alerts, this is a bit geeky, but still interesting. There is an attack on random access memory called RoHammer. Without getting any of the details of what RoHammer is, it allows a non-associated virtual machine running on the same physical computer as your virtual machine is running, which happens a lot, for example, in the cloud, but also in corporate environments, to be able to go off and cause memory to reveal the contents of memory. And that includes protected memory, encryption keys, all kinds of stuff like that. So this goes back to 10 years ago, maybe. And the memory makers, the folks that manufacture memory chips, have been trying to figure out how to stop the attacks. There was or is an attack or a mitigation that people have been using in the very newest DDR5 memory. And now researchers have figured out how to go compromise that, which is obviously not great. It's a bit of a niche attack. So probably not the biggest worry in the world, but it is interesting, and there's nothing you can do. This is up to the memory makers and to a lesser extent the folks that write operating systems to go mitigate this. But this problem of what they're doing is they're flipping bits and seeing what happens is not going away, and sounds like the problem is not solved. So that's all with that. So we have CMMC, and as usual, I'll pick one conversation out of the CMMC basket. And this one is an interesting one. There's an article this week in Federal News Network talking about that CMMC assessments are, and these are my words, uncovering folks who are committing felonies and have been committing felonies. They say it much more nicely, but fundamentally what it boils down to is there is data which companies have, which is export restricted, and they have not historically been treating it like it should be treated. And that is a felony, can be a felony, can carry $1 million fine per violation and 20 years in prison. So pretty important stuff. And if you have any export restricted data as part of your CMMC project, then you should definitely reach out to us and we can help you with that. On the software and hardware to check out, and this is maybe you might want to check out. Microsoft in October is going to start force installing Microsoft CoPilot, that's their AI chatbot and tool, on computers of folks that have Microsoft 365, Windows 365, Office 365. And there is a way as a corporate administrator you can disable that from happening. But just so you know, it's probably okay, assuming that it doesn't listen in on you and that you can trust Microsoft and what they say. But it's just annoying when Microsoft does things like that because it obviously meets their business objective. It has nothing to do with what the customer wants. If the customer wanted it, they could just say, do you want to install this? But they're not doing that. They're just telling you are going to install it. And certainly you wouldn't want to use one of our competing products like OpenAI's product or Anthropic or any of those. So that's just what they're doing. The good news is if you're a corporate administrator, you can go to the admin console and block the download of it, but you'd have to take some steps. This one probably doesn't have any business impact, but it is interesting and probably about time. And I think ultimately it's a good thing. Apple is renumbering their operating systems. Up until now, Mac OS has a different major version number than iOS, than watchOS, and all these other OSs. And so, you say, gee, I'm using OS 26. And, well, what does that map to on the Mac side, or what does that, map to on my watch? So now what they're going to do is everything is going to be based on the year. And of course, they couldn't make it that simple. it's the next year. So the operating system they're going to release in 2025 is going to be called OS 26 because, after all, I guess they're forward looking and so and fair enough. They release it in the fall, and so most of the time people will using it will be in that next year. But right now, the release that's going to come out soon is like iOS and macOS 26. That's going to come out in late 2025, very soon, and be in use during most of 2026. So I think it gets rid of some of the confusion on the part of users about which operating system version are they using. I'm assuming the patches are going to be like iOS 26.1 or macOS 26.1.2, stuff like that, but I don't know. They haven't said. In the important issues department, there is a self-replicating worm that affects software on the JavaScript repository, the NPM repository. It's interesting. At least 187 packages have been found to be infected. What happens is when you install one of these infected packages on your computer, it goes off and looks and sees what else you have access to, write access. It then goes off and patches whatever it is that you have access to do updates. So it winds up being self-replicating. It'll do that for up to 20 different packages that you have write access to. So not a great thing. They're trying to contain it, but obviously this is it seems to me pretty simple bit of engineering. So I'm guessing it's going to get replicated again, even if they shut it down. And then also in the patches department, Samsung is releasing a patch for its Android phones. It's a 0-day patch. It's rated 8.8 out of 10, so it's pretty high severity. It's in their image processing library, and it is being actively exploited. So probably if your users have Android phones, now would be a good time to patch it. And if you have some kind of mobile device management software where you can push the issue, then that would be even better. Under legislative and legal, Chegg, who makes a really popular learning management platform for schools, made it very hard for consumers, who are the ultimate users there, to cancel their subscription. And even if you ask them nicely, directly, to cancel the subscription, they didn't. So now they get a bunch of bad publicity. They got fined by the FCC for $7.5 million. They did not get referred to the Justice Department for criminal charges, which I'm sure the guys at Chegg are really happy about. But if you were one of the parents who signed your kid up for studying, so like an SAT kind of study or whatever it was, math, then you're probably not happy with these guys, and hopefully they'll clean up their act at least. Salesforce, has been in the news lately. They've been the, shall we say, beneficiary of the SalesLoft vulnerability. I don't really vulnerability. It was an employee who fell for a phishing attack and got their credentials compromised. Now we're talking about, and big guys got compromised because they're the guys that often use Salesforce. So I have people like, Google and Farmers and Christian Dior and other folks like that. There's somewhere between 50 and 100 lawsuits that have already been filed. People are just now, some of them are just now figuring out that they've been breached. So this is, Salesforce's legal team is going to be busy for a long time. This one is kind of interesting that we didn't detect it apparently. A Chinese defector who was granted political asylum for opposing the People's Republic of China in Tiananmen Square was found to be actually a Chinese operative, and he, he's 68 years old, so he's not a youngster. He participates with other Chinese dissidents and leads a nonprofit dedicated to promoting democracy in China. But apparently, that's all a front. He was really working for the Communist Party and spying on these folks that he is making friends with. So it's an interesting way of dealing with, Chinese Communist Party is not does not like dissidents. So anything they can do to figure out what they're doing and obviously sabotage it, they would consider that a plus. In the breaches department, French multinational Kering, who is the parent company of Gucci, Balenciaga, Yves Saint Laurent, and a bunch of others, was hacked. This is another one of those, I think, Salesforce attacks, but they're now in the process of notifying 7.5 million people that their data has been compromised. This is not super sensitive data unless you consider your address sensitive, which it could be, certainly for some people. But it's, names, phone numbers, home addresses, how much you spent, stuff like that. So, but that's out in the wild now. Hackers have figured out how to hide fake remote management software. That's the software that IT folks use to take over your computer and fix things or whatever inside of fake Chrome updates. So you get an email that looks like it came from Google. Gee, we have a really important Chrome update. Click here to install the update. Well, not only are you not installing an update, but you're installing a backdoor so the bad guys can get a computer and steal all your stuff. Not great. What can I tell you? Not great. Next, the Uvalde School District. You remember, unfortunately, they were the center of a mass school shooting. I think about 17 kids were murdered, and the cops stood outside eating donuts because nobody wanted to go in there and confront the shooter. Well, I think there's a lot of folks on both sides that have opinions about that. Generally speaking, I think the cops screwed up. Um, anyway, now they got hit by a ransomware attack. Again, they're not prepared for it. In some sense, I don't blame them. It's a very small town, very small school district. Don't have a lot of money. It's a poor part of the state. It's a rough deal for all these, little towns and little school districts that are just trying to, do what they're doing, and now they get, whacked by some hacker. So, not a great situation. But again, they weren't prepared, and again, like I said, lots of small cities and districts are not prepared, and hackers don't seem to care. The Salesforce breach I just talked about a minute ago, we're now talking about 760 companies at least that have been identified as being victims of this attack, and 1.5 billion users whose data is compromised. And I don't think we're anywhere near the end of this one. This one's going to go on for a while. In the security news bites, Google, this is interesting. Google added the capability, if you're an Android user, there's some software that's out there where they can check a photo, and then if you're inside of Chrome and you open that photo, inside of a website or whatever, it can tell you that the photo has not been altered from when it came out of the camera. Right now, this only exists on Android or Pixel 10s, although they'll extend that, and it only exists on Android. But the folks that are making this kind of verification software, they're not Google related, so I'm guessing that it'll show up in other places as well. Pretty cool stuff. There was a congressional hearing on UFOs, which really kind of went sideways on Congress. One of the Congress critters showed a video of a Reaper drone, one of our really big drones, firing a Hellfire missile at this object that was flying. And apparently the missile just bounced off of it and the object kept going on its way. We don't believe that we have any technology like that would be able to repel a Hellfire missile. So, was it an alien? I don't know. Yeah, every now and then you see these things about these breach settlements, and I'm not really much of a fan on that. I got a notice of a breach settlement from there's a parking meter app where you can pay for a parking meter on your phone, and I got a whole dollar, but I can't use all that dollar all at once. I have to use it 25 cents at a time, so I have to park 4 times using this app. and I'll get 25 cents each time off. Like, really? In the meantime, I think that's how we should pay the lawyers too. They got like 7 million in cash. The online marketplaces like the Walmart marketplace and the Amazon marketplace, there's a lot of products that are sold by the company, but then there's a lot of products that are sold by third parties. And apparently the vetting process for these third parties is a little bit weak. I can tell you personally from stuff that I bought, I've not been happy with the product and sent it back, but apparently this is a big deal. And this particular article was talking about Walmart, that they're just not doing enough to vet the vendors that they're allowing on the marketplace. Because what they want is a lot of vendors. That's good because it gives the illusion that you can get anything you want on their marketplace. And finally, DHS's ICE is using spyware to hack phones, and I don't think there's any oversight. This particular spyware is designed to hack a phone which is locked, that they somehow came into acquisition of, whether it came at an airport, an arrest, whatever it was, but the phone was locked. The software allows them to at least try to unlock it. It's a product I'm familiar with. It's a pretty good product, but for a lot of the time it'll definitely work. But no oversight that I can detect. And I can't iterate this enough times, but supply chain attacks, that's where the attacks are now. And the reason why they're doing that is because many times the supply chain is much less protected. And it's also more lucrative for the hackers because, like, for example, with this Salesforce attack, which is not Salesforce's fault at all. They got, what was it, somewhere's in here, 760 businesses for one attack, one compromise, 1.5 billion users. And now everybody's scrambling to figure out how do we go off and contain this monstrosity. So if you don't have a good supply chain risk management program, now would be a great time to get on the phone with us. We'll be happy to help you build one of those. Until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening. And if we can help, please reach out to us. Thanks.